Prague, they came immediately to his house looking for him and his brother. Oh, that's a painting by his brother, but it fits in with a poem that I'll read later. And this is Karel again, self-portrait. And I want to start out with a poem, even though it's the wrong time of year for it, but it should be at the beginning of summer, and that's when I read that at another gathering, and Howard really liked it. So I'm going to read it for you guys too, even though it's not seasonal. Okay. I just call Adam and Eve. He, in addition to writing so many short stories and a number of plays and novels and books about, well, his PhD was in philosophy, books about words, books about dogs and cats and gardening. You name it, he wrote about it. And so much political commentary, that's what got him in bad with the Nazis and the communists. He was encouraging the Czechs and Slovaks who, you know, they'd been subjugated in the Austro-Hungarian Empire for what, 2.5 centuries. He wanted to get them knowledgeable about this brand shiny new democracy that had been created right after World War I, and that was the First Republic of Czechoslovakia. And he wanted people to understand that government wasn't something that you tried to avoid or undercut. It's something you had to take part in, or it wasn't going to work. And he wanted his country to be a shiny model for the rest of Europe. There were countries who called themselves democracies or republics, but it was the same old princes and peasants stuff. They were really doing it in the Czechoslovakia. Okay, this is the one for earlier in the summer, and I just refer to it as Adam and Eve. It's one of the many hundreds of things that he wrote for a newspaper as well, Lidové noviny, Prague newspaper that went all around the country. Well, he wrote for British and French and German. Even there's stuff that he wrote that appears even in American publications, Christian Science Monitor. But this is, I don't know, I think it's fairly universal, for Christians anyway. I don't know what it means, or if it's really so, but stuck inside my head is a tale from long ago. When God created Adam, or so this tale implies, the deal included Eve. It was just like paradise. But a snake who bore a grudge and shared their habitat dropped in on Eve one day and coiled up for a chat. Shortly, Eve was sighing in Adam's loving ear. "Summer's coming, darling. Let's go someplace else this year. Hiking's out, no mountains. No swimming, there's no shore. Let's face it, in the summer, Eden is a bore. We could hang around the garden, but there's nothing much to do. If you really love me, Adam, take me someplace new." "Adam," raged the Lord, "you've bungled it, young sir. Paradise is finished, you've given in to her. Go to the Seer Mountains if that's what she wants to do, but this, you primal fool, is how I'll punish you. You'll sweat all year, and then, instead of relaxation, when work is through, I sentence you to going on vacation." There's another poem in this very batch. Not funny at all. But most of this writing was done in the 20s and 30s. Not all of it, but most of it. That was a difficult time. Think of the Spanish Civil War, the practice war for fascists, and a bunch of other stuff going on. In fact, I'll do this one now. I refer to it as the death of the 20th century. He wrote it in 1936, so you can see how far ahead the end of the 20th century would be. When this century collapses, dead at last, and its sleep within the dark tomb has begun, come, look down upon us, world, file past, and be ashamed of what our age has done. Inscribe our stone that everyone may see what this dead era valued most and best. Science, progress, work, technology, and death. But death we prized above the rest. We set new records measuring men and deeds in terms of greatness. Thus we tempted fate. In keeping with the greatness of our needs, our heroes and our gangsters, too, were great. 20th century buried, nonetheless, world, see what eras yet to come will gain. Great new records, great inventions, wretchedness, dictators, war, a ruined town in Spain. And of course there was so much bombing going on in Spain, and that's when his brother painted this in a series of paintings from bombed out towns, schools, hospitals in Spain. Sometimes for his regular column, and he wrote whenever he wanted to for the newspaper, which is pretty much all the time when he wasn't writing all that other stuff I mentioned earlier. He called them fables. We would probably refer to them as aphorisms. These have to do with war also. And I don't wage war. The anthill does. Leader, follow me, everybody, and I'll lead you from November to December. Wolf, peace is when no one is hunting us wolves. Sparrow, so what, Nightingale? There are more of us sparrows. Rooster, no, it can't be morning. I haven't yet given the signal. Important fly, don't you know? That's the fly that sat on the king's forehead. Peace, we don't want war. Punitive action against anyone weaker will do. No war. Proof that we really don't want war. We fight without a formal declaration. Goodwill. We're willing to submit our conflict to an international conference with the provision, of course, that it decides in our favor. Some of this is going to sound very, very, very close to home. Trial. 300 arrested, and what shall we have them confess to? Commander, human rights? That's interference in our internal affairs. Mayfly. History? It tells me nothing. Maggot. Long live war. Okay, these are a few of his, well, I call them selected shorts, as in short films, and you can envision it. This one's called Strange Food. It can happen to anyone. A man finds himself at a more or less festive board with food placed in front of him, which he had never eaten before. Usually it's some nasty marine mess, something in a shell or crustacean armor, and damn it, how are you supposed to eat the thing? With a fork, knife, fingers? In a situation like this, the banqueter doesn't want to give himself away, so he looks around him. But as if something had just struck him at the very moment, and then launches into an animated conversation with his neighbor. Why doesn't anyone else begin eating, for heaven's sake? Oddly enough, at that same moment, practically all the others seated at the table also fall into animated conversation with their neighbors. Only one gentleman, who doesn't have anyone to talk to, begins reluctantly pursuing this strange delicacy around his plate with a fork. Evidently a fork won't do. Finally, someone present makes the first stab at this mysterious course, more or less successfully. At this, everyone seizes the appropriate sword and begins, with relief, and begins to eat, acting as if they'd eaten that particular dish all their lives. Also at the banquet table, this too can happen to anyone. A man spatters gravy or spills red wine, making a stain on the white tablecloth by his place setting. Damn, right in front of me. Hasn't anyone else spoiled the tablecloth yet? No one. What's the matter with it? I'll place my fork over the stain. Oh! No, now the waiter's taken it away. Then I'll set a roll on top of it. That bungling waiter's taken the roll away, too. Then I'll put my napkin there. Yes, but everyone else is still eating. Well, then I'll place my hand over it like this. Oh, no, thank you, I don't care for fruit. Great God, when will these gluttons finish? This man in a dinner jacket. These are from mid-30s, by the way. People haven't changed. Clothes may have changed a bit, not people. It's called Man in a Dinner Jacket. A man is invited out for an evening in society. It will no doubt be formal. But upon arriving, he discovers that the others are wearing gray suits, pinstripes, similar attire. It's a wonder they didn't come in woolly slippers or gym pants. If only one of them at least had also worn a dinner jacket, I wouldn't feel so alone. They'll laugh at me for being so dressed up. Whereupon the conduct of the only man afflicted with a dinner jacket develops in one or the other of two possible ways. Either he chats away heartily and behaves as nonchalantly as possible to show that wearing a dinner jacket is nothing, really, nothing at all out of the ordinary for him. And he even goes around in one at home. Or else he maintains to the very end the kindly but somewhat distant reserve of a man who knows that he alone is properly dressed, but doesn't want to make the others feel too uncomfortable. I'll do sportswear too. At times it happens the other way around, and a man wearing a gray or checked suit finds himself, amongst others, in dinner jackets and black ties. At first he's a bit insulted that he wasn't notified in advance, but then he begins to behave somewhat flamboyantly, even eccentrically, just as if he were shouting, "I don't give a damn for your formality. I am a Democrat and I hold you in contempt, you stuffed shirts, and furthermore, long live the revolution." This is 1933. It's called Voice on the Radio. Whoever tuned in Germany last Friday night caught a voice greatly unlike the sounds that ordinarily come out of the radio. And you must forgive, please, my non-pronunciation of German, okay? There were screams of the sort a third-rate actor would give in Götz von Berlichingen. For instance, the blurred, hoarse whispering of the word Verrat, an impassioned crying of the words Recht, Aufstand, or Volk, and then again a kind of tiger's roar. In short, a polished production. One female soul, caring little about the state of the world, stopped by the radio in alarm. "What on earth are you listening to? He sounds like some kind of bully." It was the Chancellor of the German Reich speaking, the Führer Adolf Hitler, to thousands of his followers at the Berlin Sports Palace. Just between us, he's no statesman, judging by what he said. But this is not political commentary. According to Friday night's illustration, Adolf Hitler is no speaker either, but a pitchman. This is exactly the way speeches were delivered at mass meetings in the 90s. He's speaking of his own country, but we can guess. Each time he said, "Das Deutsche Volk," he paused, waiting for applause. And each time the applause came. There was no clapping for ideas, not even for the demagogic slogans, only each time and frenziedly for those three words. Even Verrat no longer drew, only Verrat an dem deutschen Volk. I don't know if you saw the movie that was in town recently, Madame Curie. It was lovely, lovely film. This is about her. Who, 50 years from now, will remember the names of today's government ministers, marshals, the other great of the world. But the name of Madame Curie will survive. People will always remember that coupled with this name is one of the most profound changes of human opinion on matter and energy, on the unimaginably small atom, and on the astonishing architecture of matter. No pretentious heroism, no domination over other people in history, only patient laboratory attempts and minutely detailed experiments with the peculiar pitch blende ore. of which there's only a small amount in the entire world. And yet, what is the glory of potentates and dictators compared with this? What is the entire French Academy compared to this? The French Academy that did not do itself the honor of election to membership of the diminutive, gray-haired woman with a body corroded by the rays which she helped to introduce to the world of science. It isn't necessary the bombers roar and cannon thunder over her coffin. In her everlasting honor is the unceasing and silent bombardment of alpha, beta, and gamma particles, electrons, protons, and positrons, a bombardment which, for our knowledge, shot through a breach in the mysterious limits of matter. This is a victory that will endure. Madame Curie Sklodowsky is one of those few people who have changed the world. Madame Curie Sklodowsky gave her life for the world. Okay, I got to do this one because he introduced the word robot to all of us. Okay, the whole world. It's a really old Slavic word. It refers to medieval times, feudal times, and robot was the work that you did for the lord of the manor, or else. Sure, it was servitude or slavery, even if you wish, but that's the root of the word. This is 1933. That play was first staged in 1921, late 1920. It was all over the world, translated in no time. First time, evidently, that one word went out to the whole world at once. A reference by Professor Kudaba to the Oxford Dictionary account of the word robot's origin and its entry into the English language reminds me of an old debt. The author of the play R.U.R. did not, in fact, invent that word. He merely ushered it into existence. It was like this. The idea for the play came to said author in a single, unguarded moment. And while it was still warm, he rushed immediately to his brother Joseph, the painter, who was standing before an easel and painting away at a canvas till it rustled. They were sharing a house at the time. "Listen, Joseph," the author began. "I think I have an idea for a play." "What kind?" the painter mumbled. He really did mumble, because at the moment he's holding a brush in his mouth. Mm-hmm. The author told him as briefly as he could. "Then write it," the painter remarked, without taking the brush from his mouth or halting work on the canvas. The indifference was quite insulting. But the author said, I don't know what to call these artificial workers. I could call them labori, but that strikes me as a bit bookish." "Then call them robots," the painter muttered, brush in mouth, and went on painting. And that's how it was. Thus was the word robot born. Let this acknowledge its true creator. And if you know sci-fi freaks, folks very interested in robots, got a lot more things really interesting that he wrote about his robots as opposed to the clanking metal monsters with cogs and wires. That's fun. Okay. Fables from the future. Oh, concerning points of view. Well, we'll just skip that. But it's interesting, comparing a critical point of view with an ethical point of view, with a personal point of view, from my point of view, our point of view, etc. These are fables from the future. Yeah, and I'll share that with you. You'll be thinking, well, if you go back that far, 1950s, and people building bomb shelters in their backyards. This is from 1934, so we didn't have atomic or hydrogen bombs yet, so we didn't have bomb shelters. But, in fact, what this really came from was an article he wrote about some commission in the city of Prague wanting to expand the city's borders. That sounds familiar, too. And pushing into the nearby hills and building something there for people to live in. Okay. In the age of bomb shelters, can you believe it? People once built their houses above ground. What primitive times those were. Building commissioner, from the standpoint of health, Their cave is defective. It lets in air. Landlord. And if you don't pay your rent, I'll throw you out in the sun. Boy. Daddy, what is peace? I don't know. Don't ask stupid questions. Bride. And we're going to have a little underground porch where I can set out some pots of mushrooms and bowls. Year 2200. The greatest invention of our times. Stainless flint tools. I'm not going to do butt people either, but you know about butt people. You say something, yeah, well, yes, but. Indiscretion from Geneva. Oh, he rewrites something that yet another disarmament conference has put out. And the last thing I'm not going to read is one of his fabulous, I think they're fabulous essays on a whole lot of things in this world. They're longer. This one is about inventions. When he acquires a Swedish vacuum cleaner and sees the amount of dust it picks up in just one day. You know, it's great fun. I'm sorry to say, none of these are in that, or in any of those books, but that's what you get. Thank you so much.